Okay, we are live, if I'm not mistaken. I've got a great handle on scheduling things. 3.5 minutes in advance, but it is what it is. All right. Hello, Athanasius. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Jason Scholl. I wanted to banter a bit. Also try something. I don't know if the camera is any better, because after being on Jim Bob's stream, I also realized that I was very much cutting off. Happy New Year, Silver Pie, Jacob. But it was, my camera was laggy even then. Audio is cutting. Well, that's just unforgivable, isn't it? Happy New Year, Magdalene. Yeah, it's still lagging, huh? Right. But I'm also starting to suspect that it might be the camera. Hey, Posh, love you just started EMJ's Libido Dominandi. Right. I've got some critique of that book, but it's not bad. We don't exactly, the Eastern Church has never really accepted Saint Augustine's view of passion and intercourse and stuff. But it's good. It's worth checking out, Harry. Hello, Taliesin. S Novim Godom, Posh. We say Srećna Nova Godina. So we have a bit of a different phrasing. So that's my response to you. Good to see you, Ituska. Happy New Year. My bad audio clipping was my end. Okay. Damn it, Athanasius. Damn it all. Hello, Shareholders United. So I was a bit under the weather, the last couple of days. It's one of those things where I just feel a bit, chilly for some reason. I think, is it the heating? Is it the fact that it's really warm for this time of year? It's not warm, but it's warm for, the end of December, start of January. And then I for a couple of days, I'm basically sick and I don't know it. And then all of a sudden I check my temperature and oh, so that's it. Just finished Horse Narrative, a must read. Oh yeah, he's been posting about that a lot on X. I've also realized, what do you call tweets then? If the platform is called X, do you X something? And then I say, I responded to your X. Rather unfortunate phrasing there. So you run to YouTube after our interaction. I swear, if I was in some spy network telegram, I'd rather have that leak than my chat with Chase. He changed them to just posts? What? That's utterly pathetic. Xing away. Delighted to catch the poshest Serb live for once. Thank you. Midgets will never forgive us. Yeah, bro, did you see my ex? Oh, I was so happy with my ex. That thought came to me yesterday, I believe. That phrasing isn't particularly desirable. Oh, goodness gracious. Right. Speaking of X, I've got a lot to say about what I've been seeing there. Obviously, Calendargate is very much the hullabaloo right now. Obviously, I'm not happy with it. it's not the way to go. But the people go around saying, "Oh, this is demonic." I guess technically, but technically everything that isn't godly is demonic. So I think we should approach things more with healing, right? So you obviously say something like, "This isn't proper." We should appeal to propriety rather than just outright like pretending like it's the end of the world. It's not been good for for the minds of a lot of conservatives in the West. So I'm really I don't know, concerned that it's starting to go more into the way I see prots have always been interacting with each other, and I appeal to the idea that try to approach things with an idea that this person is being misled by demons. That is how we should view sin. It is a thing of misleading. It is always trying to bend things into the direction of ungodliness. Rachel and Andrew have been very vocal on this point, and I support it again. They have been clear, I believe, that it's not about it's not even about calling them grifters. It's about this isn't proper. Like the woman with the making a cake. It's so disheartening to see how little it takes to cause such immense. God damn it! I need a haircut. Such incredible amounts of distress. Hello, Austin DiTullio. Have you read Alistair MacLean on Partisans and Force 10 from Navarone? All on Serbo-Croatia? No, I haven't, actually. Posh's name just came up in a conversation. Well, speak of the devil. In Latin, the phrase is lupus in fabula, which literally means the wolf in the story. But the meaning is like speak of the devil. So this is a sort of a speak of the devil, if something came up. Support Rachel and David Patrick Henry. Yes. Not Henry, it's Harry. So I don't know why you would dismiss your own name, Harry Ludwig. I haven't read that book. I forgot to respond to you. I will have to check it out then. If it's not something I'm very fond of reading about. The whole sorry affair with Serbo-Croatia. Everyone is highly illiterate. You have no idea what it's like to grow up with Serbian, where you speak and spell exactly the same in Cyrillic. No superfluous letters. If there's a double letter, they're both pronounced, which is very rare actually, but it's still both are pronounced constant always. Like Nayachi, meaning the strongest. You don't say Nayachi, and then people get that wrong. And things like that, and then going into English, and as they call it, like the spelling is like a vague suggestion of what you should say. So the illiteracy is much less problematic for me when I know people have grown up with English, and I know you've had to deal with this your entire life. Serbia, the Kentucky of the East. Hello, Randy West. And Melaforta. Right, so it's the whole thing that has come to me. These discussions on Twitter have been rather. It's this tendency, I believe, was started by the new atheist movement. That you don't actually need to talk about anything of substance. Substance. Sorry about that. Of substance. That all you try to do is constantly get a knockout. Right? It's like this trying to seek a single point of failure. So no one basically engages. They just try to get you to say something ridiculous or point out at some minor detail that turns out to be insufficiently substantiated or whatever. It's never about having this great discussion, which is why there has been such a starved, expectation of people for someone like Jay Dyer, like David Patrick Harrier, like Jim Bob, like Andrew, to have these. There are others that are not in our sphere, but are at least approaching things with, how shall we say, a more comprehensive approach. Things have been getting better since the New Atheists, and I think this is a good thing. It's far from being mainstream because we still think, the discussions with like Peterson and Shapiro and Prager are somehow comprehensive. No, they're not. They're actually just a small sliver of Enlightenment thinking that purports itself to be the solution to everything. And as I talked about, well, I didn't talk about it, but I responded to a post by Tristan Haggard about the revolution, the French Revolution, and I said it failed so spectacularly because it was trying to be consistent. This is the whole problem that people have with continental European thought. Like the French Revolution versus the American Revolution, why this and that, despite obvious, differences in circumstance, what France was and what America was at the time. The intellectual aspects of it is that France recognized, or the French revolutionaries recognized, that if you're not going to have Christianity, you just can't keep it as a crutch. It's intellectually cowardly to do so. But the English Revolution, which was more intellectual, right, was to bend Christianity into a crutch all the time. And this is anyone seeing video started with clear audio? It seems like the bitrate is set too high for Balkan mule carried internet. Yeah, I thought I could solve it. We were trying to change the port or something, but it appears not to be working. Okay, Peterson was smashed by Gregory Garrett. Lessing in The Serpent with 1,000 Faces. I've not seen that. I'm thinking I'm going to need this for the Latin lessons because I'm a huge supporter of writing things down when you're learning a language. It's the muscle memory in your fingers and your hand and the eye coordination really helps you remember words and constructs of phrases. But we do what we can with what we've got currently. This is going to be about an hour stream because, as I said, I'm not feeling too great, but I wanted to see with the camera, visit back with you people, and then do a proper one on Thursday. I'll invite Jim Bob over after Lent to review Christopher Hitchens. But I should really keep it after Lent because we're going to be going off on someone quite harshly. So back to what I was saying, the French Revolution and the Continental thought is, okay, let's wrestle with the idea that we don't believe in Christianity anymore. So it produces all sorts of comprehensive nonsense. it is nonsense, but they're trying to actually deal with the fact that Christianity is no longer the prevailing paradigm. That's how you get people like Nietzsche, right? As Peterson always has to remind people, oh, it was not triumphant, that God is dead. Yes, of course. But there are a couple of problems then, because you are going to have to deal with the fact that his solution is basically, well, figure it out for yourself. It's just not going to work. And then they praise the English approach, but as I said, it bends Christianity into a crutch all the way to today, where the Anglican Church is a farce, it's a joke, but it is keeping up with the current paradigm. And I've heard Father Stephen DeYoung make an excellent point about how Protestantism has really embraced this Lutheran-based Hegelian view of history, that history is, the movement of the Holy Spirit, But again, we as Orthodox, or even the Catholics, cannot have this view, because we have an idea of secondary causality, we have an idea of free will, whereas if you don't have an idea of free will, well, then everything is directed by God. So anything that happens is going to be important because God wanted it to be so. You can't really condemn it. And things always have to progress, right? This is why also a lot of people are very, very unhappy with how things are working out because of Hegel, right? They hate Hegel, but he is at least trying to have some thought, as wrong as it might be. He's trying to be consistent. So that is why you can't really appeal to tradition when you're dealing with Protestantism, because especially for the Lutheran types, it just keeps advancing in this manner because it's all the working of the Holy Spirit. So, oh yeah, sure, we didn't used to have female pastors, but now we do, because things, that's the work of the Holy Spirit, right? So we can say that Holy Tradition is the work of the Holy Spirit in the church, but that takes a lot of things into account. So progress is not right. Well, progress is also going to be paradigm dependent, right? They have an idea of progress that we would not agree with. For us, progress is basically the only progress we properly recognize as theosis, right? That's how you progress towards God the most directly. Okay, but back to what I was talking about. This is now seen everywhere. The progressivism works this way. It sort of has this inbuilt set of constrictors that don't allow it to see progress in whatever manner. And you can see that it is individualistic. This is why I keep saying to libertarians, communists are also individualists. They just believe that optimal levels of individualism are more outcome based, rather than the libertarian, which is more methodologically based and based on principles like the NAP and things. But the view is still communism per se. The part of history that is supposed to be achieved after socialism is pure individualism. You disagree methodologically, but that's the goal. It's always like, which is why progressives are so insufferable. If you try to take any vice away from them, they feel like you destroyed the world. Nothing can ever be, recovered after that. I have not seen you with Andrew in a long time. Well, I've interviewed him here. He's not invited me for the shows. He's had a great lineup, and also I've got quite a different energy than he might have wanted for the specials. Progress is a subjective word. Well, subjective, I would prefer to say paradigm dependent, because you can say personal progress and then you can say this more general view, but it's still going to rely on the paradigm that you've adopted, wittingly or unwittingly. So in a sense, I agree, but it's preferable to call it paradigm dependent. Let's force Christianity for better outcomes. The same thing, in my opinion. It's depending on what you mean by forced Christianity. Like, you can't force people into believing it, but we can definitely put restrictions on it, or on behavior generally. That's what I agree with, but you can't really just force these things. It's going to cause resentment more than anything. Like, a lot of extremely damaging, people come out of these extraordinarily, puritanical backgrounds where there is no understanding that you are under the, under the influence of the demonic, and then you just want to do something because it's so fun. The demons are very tricky. They twist and turn and red herring, and then compartmentalize certain thoughts. It's no understanding. It's the whole thing. Again, back to St. John Chrysostom, who says the church is a hospital, not a courtroom, for this very reason. And then if you are just trying to enforce it, you are going to get worse out of it, than if you're trying to have a more level-headed approach. It's the whole thing. You've got permissiveness, you've got authoritarianism, and then somewhere in between is authority, like authoritative, not authoritarian. And that is what I believe we should go for, and not just go around beating people for not coming to church or whatever. It's just not going to work. This focus on such more punitive, more guilt-inducing measures is partly why Protestantism sprung off from Catholicism, because unfortunately Catholicism really started to focus a lot on guilt, and that breeds scrupulosity, and that's not spiritually healthy at all. I love Chrysostom, especially in Judaism. Yes, based St. John. I forgot to tell you, my Episcopalian fiance to come to liturgy a few weeks ago, and she loved it. Author wife secured. Wonderful news, Randy. Wonderful news. Let's see if I missed something in the chat. We have another. Okay, but we love your energy and insight. If he invites me, I'll be happy to come over. That's no problem. But I have no expectation. Like, I'm going to be offended if he doesn't call me for a special or anything. He is dealing with a lot of growth for the channel and a lot of different subjects. So that he has to deal with that first. Guilt is a Semitic fault, re Holocaust. I'm not actually sure. Guilt is a very powerful thing, but it precedes that. In fact, they tend to work a lot more on pride, but then it is a very weaponized emotion, because there is a place for guilt. It's just that if you don't have an understanding that you're supposed to be healed through Christ instead of just being shouted at by, because if like some Southern Baptist preacher, like a Stephen Anderson or whatever, started shouting at you, you're an idolatrous piece of shit, yada yada, I'm not going to start feeling guilty. I'm just tell him to buy an actually fitting suit or whatever. Hello, D Sims. Right. So another point that I want to mention is that I've been seeing since lots of gender fights on Twitter. I've seen a lot of people, with that blasted Pearl woman. Posh, you never addressed my calendar question. Sorry, I forgot what exactly it was. Who told me I know you're on something? Never mind. So repeat it if you're not just joking, Athanasius. Bonsai Pack sends in $10. Thank you very much, Bonsai Pack. Free will versus God's will. How is everything not predetermined? Thus, our choice is mere illusion. Does he want us to sin? Can we go against his will and repent instead? Asking for a friend. Okay, since you super chatted, I'll answer immediately. We've talked about this in what type of will. There are all types of will. There's a human will. There's an angelic will. There are all type of natural wills, to the point that you can say that, a seed has a will, because the natural will is this sort of force or like property that brings a seed to bloom into whatever it is, flower, tree, or whatever. So when we talk about God's will is not the equivalent of a human will, but with infinite power, right? So we talk about, oh, God knew everything ahead of time. Well, God is not within time. And when I was very early on trying to deal with this question when I was a teen, I was really concerned. I wanted to believe like evil is somehow a deviation from God's will, but how does he? If knowing something, like you would have to say he didn't know how things would work out. Obviously, like if I just shoot a gun around and hit someone unwillingly, that could happen. But if I knew where every shot would land, like I couldn't say it was unwilling. But then when I got deep into it, you realize God is outside of time. God is not bound by time or space. And then he like pushed a set of dominoes. It's not even, as I forgot to mention, when I was starting out, I sort of thought of it as a timeline, and God is outside of it, sort of like a loading bar or developing, But it's not even that. Even that is then saying God is within time, some, meta time, watching our time, play out. And it's just insufficient. God is all-powerful and all-knowing. And with that power, which we cannot conceive, he can create us and angels as secondary causalities. Because we cause things, but not directly from God. That's why we are caused causes, aka secondary. That's what secondary causality means. So we somehow have free will, but God's knowledge of things isn't like our knowledge of things. God's relationship to time is not like our relationship to time. So it's not that he precedes it, because you would still need time to be in time, to precede time. That's a temporal relation before. Likewise, how shall we say? We experience time in that sense, and we experience even the angelic influences from our perspective. So when we think about, so when we are baptized, the priest prays for an angel to be assigned to the person being baptized, a guardian angel. Okay, so does God like create one right there? Are there like idle angels around just waiting to be assigned, etc.? But or when we talk about angelic rulership over certain places, like we talk about the pagan gods, God judges the gods of Egypt, which means that there are gods of Egypt. but they are created, right? They are angelic creatures that have fallen, and that's why they can be judged. They can't be judged if they're non-existent. They have rulership over this place, and that is ultimately replaced as the church expands, is consecrated. Those angels are replaced with saints, or which can, of course, not just can include the angels like Saint Michael or Saint Gabriel, Raphael, etc. They were the OG saints. Saint meaning the Holy One. So now that Christ has opened the ways of heaven, St. John sees 12 humans, with crowns in heaven, and when we read the book of Revelations, because now humans are joining the angelic orders, and that's why we have Church of St. Mark, Church of St. Matthew, Church of St. John Chrysostom, etc. So is it like, okay, so now you have this demon, and now this person is taking over? This is, we can think of it in some sense. Religion of the Apostle has some good chapters on this. Exactly, D. Sims. Father Stephen Young always recommended reading. But angelic reality and relationship to time is not like ours. But when they come into our experience is when we start thinking of it. But they're not floaty guys flying around, or, but we can't see them. We can't imagine what it's like to be an angel any more than we can imagine what it's like, to be a certain type of animal. We can think of a new color or a new frequency of sound that we can't hear. It's just outside of our experience, right? In short, God is transcendent to the point that he cannot be bound by like this law of causality that we would have to say he is under in order to not be able to create secondary causalities. Humans who have been elevated in some sense, well, not just elevated, they've undergone theosis to a very, very large degree, and they are not fully where they should be ultimately. That's going to come in the eschaton. That's like the full restoration of human nature. This is what Christ has done for us by his resurrection. That's not all he did, but that's a massive part of it. Exactly, which is why it is so misleading how God and angels are anthropomorphized. Exactly. It's an inversion. We should, I keep saying this, we should not think of God as anthropomorphic. We should see human beings as theomorphic. We are made in his image, and we should not, because being creatures, we are limited. We can't just project that back onto the transcendent. It's a massive error in how things play out. Your calendar question is above, okay. Transcember. 13 months of 28 days, and the extra day making 365 days would be a Lord's Day, the first day of the year. What do you think? I don't believe I have the ecclesiastic authority to pick out a new calendar. I've never looked deeply into the calendar question. I'm not that big on it because it's about organizing worship, and a lot of people before Christianity, a lot of groups were using lunar calendars, which meant a lot of shifting around. But you can't just do it mathematically, because things, as I said, tradition is the work of the Holy Spirit within the church. Like the uppercase T, capital T tradition, not like small traditions necessarily, but so I would not try and sit there and think, what would make a lot of sense, because that's what Protestants do, and then you get, transgender pastors. So it starts out well, ends up very poorly. Okay. Right. Back to the point I was trying to get. Happy Gregorian New Year. Thank you for, there we go, for Karamasal. Is that Is that at least close enough of a pronunciation? Would you debate Adam Green again? I tried interacting with him on Twitter. I could, but he is such an utter dunce. I told him, you didn't know the difference between what Israelite and Jew is. He says, yes, I knew that. And I'm going to ask, he then didn't respond, because in the debate I had with him, he said it's the same thing, and it's not. And it's when I was talking with Jim Bob, he was preparing for the debate with the first guy, Gnostic informant. We were laughing about how he's like a pound shop Adam Green. And it's just pathetic, to deal with these people. They just have. I remember David Patrick Henry losing his composure with him, because it's like trying to talk to a brick wall. It's impossible. It's like trying to. It's exactly like trying to talk to like we was Kang's people. You cannot win. Like, you cannot win, because they will just say, well, you were tricked into believing that, you were misled into believing that, and there's all types of progressivism works exactly like this. It's because of your privilege that you cannot understand why we do this, blah, blah, blah. Rubbish and nonsense and pure, unadulterated F-wordry. The 3-letter F word, not the 4-letter F word. Cannot tradition end up poorly as well, though, like some of the things the Catholic Church endorses? Well, that's the thing. If you break from tradition, you can pinpoint it. You've got this continuation. And then when they say, well, we think the Bishop of Rome is allowed to boss around all the other bishops. Where do you get that in tradition? Well, there's sort of a thing over here, but then that's not how it works. A lot of their theologians say, Benedict XVI, when he was still a cardinal, said there was no high view of the high papacy, in the first millennium. So it's not tradition. They would say it's development of tradition, but it's not tradition proper. So if you break from tradition but keep a lot of it, you've still broken with tradition. So that's not really. So of course it can. If you break from it, it's not tradition. So the Catholics have not kept it. Tradition can lead to problems in the sense of, having a pope is very useful sometimes, it can be, because it's much easier to deal with a certain heresy, but it's very much a two-edged sword, in the sense that, okay, so what if a pope embraces heresy? Well, they say it's not possible. Well, kind of difficult to defend that position. Especially with people like Honorius or something, but he said it like from a chair, that if he said from the proper chair, then he wouldn't be able to, or something. So it then becomes basically, magic at that point. But like, does he actually have any beliefs he would promulgate, like being a libertarian and objectivist? Is that about Adam Green? Right, it is about Adam Green. I've not heard any. He's just there to complain. Which reminds me of a certain group of nasally endowed people. The Christian God is much more likely to be real than the super Jewish conspiracy promoted by Adam Green. Yep, like they would have to be some of the most capable people ever. Basically, if they were able to do what he believes they've done, they basically deserve to rule the world. I was raised Protestant and was always taught that certain sects elevate tradition over the teachings of Christ. Well, you can't really base anything on a text. without an interpretation of the text, because all texts are interpreted. So prayers for Nicholas. Please pray for one of my catechumens who will be baptized as Nicholas in a few hours from now. Excellent news, Beehive. May God protect him and keep him on the good path. Always happy to hear people joining the church. And that's a great name. He's starting out well, Nicholas. I think Nicholas, like our Serbian version of Nicholas, which is Nikola, is, I think, the most widespread, or at least was until recently, the most widespread male name. I'm a Calvinian. Okay, so back to what you were saying to Mike Hart. So they say tradition over the teachings of Christ. So how do they know what is the teaching of Christ? They read a certain verse and interpret it in a certain way. And then when we or Catholics respond with another verse, they say, well, that's not how it works. You know, like we, Nikolai is superior. You know, when they bring up Romans 4, we respond with James 2, they say, well, no, that's not what he means. It's actually faith working through, working through love, and that's how you get the works. But it's this is the heresy. Okay. What was I saying? Right. If they don't like our interpretation because it's not obvious, because they also have the belief of perspicuity of the scriptures, which is to say that they're clear and obvious, to which we say, well, why are you always splintering apart on certain things? It is because, and I've done one episode, the next I hope to do on Thursday, maybe I do something else, but on the word faith, what does it mean? Does it mean faithfulness, or does it mean act of belief? James 2 is a diversion. Tradition is the heresy of the effing Jews. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Harry Ludwig. The tradition of what? Is it because of faith through works? Please talk about this. About the faith and works thing? Because, as I said, I'm preparing an actual whole stream on it. Hey, bro, love you, but we have disputes. Fair enough. As I said, I will present my case on the word faith, right, in Latin fide, in Greek pistis, and then we can talk about it. That's fair enough as far as I'm concerned. There's no point. Most Orthodox dogmatic texts I look into have faith as its very first point. Absolutely. But we have a different view of it. And to be fair to Harry Ludwig, I will be giving a full presentation on it. I'm not just mentioning it like right now, just, giving a short presentation, because I think it will not do justice to the topic. Magdalene M sends $5. Thank you very much, Magdalene. And says, can you expand on the difference between an Israelite and a Jew, please? Yes. Israel is the nation that God creates from the exiles of Egypt. They are not, by the way, an ethnic group as we would think of it today, right? There were Ethiopians there, there were lots of Egyptians there, etc. It says a mixed multitude left, like in the Bible it says that, because they didn't have an idea of genetics. Love you too, Harry Ludwig. So when they leave Egypt, God creates a nation. He doesn't pick one of the nations that already exists. He creates one specifically to be a light to the world and bring people who are under these demonic gods to the worship of the one true God. That's the purpose of creating it. One of them, and then we've got, like, very early on, we've got the split into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, right? And Judah is basically the tribe of Judah. They've got some Levites, they've got some Benjamites, etc. And then the northern kingdom gets wiped out. The northern kingdom falls into massive idolatry with the establishment of the golden calves in Bethel and Dan, which is strictly forbidden by God. He said the only sacrifices he accepts are in the temple, right, with the tabernacle. But at this point, we've got a temple in Jerusalem. So he allows the Assyrians to wipe them out. And the way Assyrians wipe people out is happy New Year, Matthew Metanoia. or birthday, if it's incidentally your birthday, that would be, predeterminism. But as I was saying, Assyrians offer a city, surrender or war. If it's surrender, they move out the populace, they spread them out across their different cities, take people from different cities and settle them there. That's how you break like any potential point where rebellion might start, and you sort of soften it up. A lot of empires have been doing that, but Assyrians are very brutal people, or were. They converted, some of the first to convert to Christianity. But if you don't surrender, they conquer you, and then they make such a debaucherous, mess of the whole place. I'm not going to get into it, but they are some of the most, violent, like art maker. They make torture an art. And just eliminate everyone so that anyone else who hears of this would prefer the choice of surrender. So when the Assyrians came, there is just no way, unless you can, fend them off, you are destroyed. And I'm mentioning all of this because that's how the northern kingdom fell. That's how there was no chance to restore it then thereafter. The 10.5 basically tribes are wiped out completely. And you're left with the kingdom of Judah. And then you've got the Jews, right? That's who they are. But then the important thing is, if you say Jew, right, or Judean, that's what this means. It means member of the tribe of Judah, basically. But Israel is this overarching thing. And typical weak nerds. But the idea is you can be grafted in or grafted out of being an Israelite. And the mark of being an Israelite was, as a man, being circumcised and participating in the Passover. If you don't do that, you are no longer an Israelite. You can't even appeal to your ethnic, heritage or whatever. You are simply not an Israelite. You're out. And if you are genetically or racially, whatever, if you then go into Israel, you are a man. You get circumcised and you participate in Pascha. This is the bare minimum, by the way. The minimum doesn't mean it's good. It means it's the basic of the basic. You become an Israelite. We see people doing that. I talk about Phineas, whose mother was Ethiopian. Phineas literally means he of dark skin, right? So who becomes like a high priest. So rather important position. And I specifically say mother was Ethiopian because you know how the rabbinical ones do it. Like you have to have, if your mother is not Jewish, then you are not Jewish. They don't care. So they've completely departed from this. But so that's the difference. When people start converting, people of the nations, or aka the Goyim, they're grafted into Israel. That is why we say the church is the new Israel. It's not just about being a Jew, as in the sense of being from Judea or descendant of someone from Judah. That is why God replaces it. And now the counterpart, I should have said for women, like you can't circumcise women unless you're a Muslim, and then that gets a bit nasty, doesn't it? But for women, and we have these, I think it was mentioned in the debate Jim Bob had, like they would shave their head. I think you cut off your nails, you get new clothes, which is like this ritual way of saying I'm starting a new life. And you have to be married to someone who is circumcised, right? Or be a daughter of someone who is circumcised, which is, but that's not conversion, is it? It's just staying in the family. I'm talking about how someone becomes a member of the tribe of Judah, for example, and therefore a member of Israel. So when they've broken things, they have to then rejoin, the church that Christ establishes as the new Israel. And now the bare minimum is being baptized and taking communion, at least on what you call Easter, right? We call the resurrection, which is, I mention only because it's not Ishtar, because sure, right, no one could find anything over in England. They brought in like a goddess from Mesopotamia, sure, that makes a lot of sense, right? So for Easter, you take communion. Like that's the bare minimum. Again, God not happy with the minimum, but you are still considered part of the church. If you don't, there is actually a ritual way to reintroduce you into it, both in the church and in the old days for Israel. So Judea left off Simeon, and they aren't Jews until Simon de Jews, first century. Hey bro, I need to take a break. This conversation obviously showed me the fake WEJ. Okay, shite. So I'll help more later. Okay. Well, here's a crucial Jew. Okay. We'll talk about it later on. So I'm giving this perspective. But obviously, if you need to take a break, just go ahead. Which languages are you fluent in, Posh? I haven't spoken some of them lately, so I hope to be able to be fluent in. But DC Woodworking, Happy New Year, Posh. Happy New Year, DC Woodworking, and thank you for your super chat. By the way, I've left a link for my PayPal in the description. That is also very helpful to me. Currently, I cannot access any super chats because the thing hasn't gone through yet with all the bank stuff and the YouTube stuff and tax information and yada yada yada. So I can access the PayPal one. So if you're feeling generous, I'd appreciate it very much. Fluent in English and Frisian. I'm still fluent in French because that's one I've learned the most. My German has deteriorated a bit, unfortunately, as has my Russian, because I just don't use them that much, which is a horrible thing, when you think about it, because it's not like riding a bike. It's constantly you have to revisit things, reuse words, and then you have no idea how quickly, even if, I know stories of people who move from a place, like they go from Mexico to the US and don't use Spanish at all, which is very rarely the case these days because you can talk to your family, on the phone or something. So that's rather unfortunate, but that's rather fortunate, that you can still talk to people back in the home country. But back in the day when you didn't have such access to telecommunication, these people would forget their own language. You think, oh no, you were born with it. No, it deteriorates very quickly. So, yeah. What are we talking about? So French and German are still pretty solid after next to Serbian. My Greek is decent, although I've never studied Greek to talk with anyone, mostly for study and for singing rebetiko and the hymns. So that's been, solid. Swedish, I never advanced to the point of fluency, etc. Yeah, Latin. That's so. What is what is it you asked? Would you recommend learning Latin before attempting Koine Greek or Hebrew? I'm sure this is a common question. Well, would I? I wouldn't say you have to learn it. I don't think you're going to get, if you are trying to get into the biblical languages, you won't get any advantage by going with them first, with Latin, because Latin is not any prerequisite for learning either. So Koine Greek. Koine Greek is basically a type of Greek. It's not really a thing, but it's good. But you won't get any advantage. So and you won't get much of an advantage from learning Greek before you learn Latin, because they've developed rather separately. A lot of words come into Latin from Greek, but that's about it. That's about the extent of the help you're going to get. The writing system won't be helpful either. Just be prepared when you start learning Greek. A lot of letters that you're used to pronouncing one way are not pronounced that way, which is going to be very fun. And be very also sure which type of Greek you're learning. Don't just go for Greek, because modern Greek is very different from, when I say very, I mean decently different from the classic ones. The number of cases, the way things work, the pronunciation is also very different, which in modern Greek, I make the joke, it's like when I started learning, it's like, are they just messing with you with this type of spelling? Like 5 ways to write the sound E. And then when you learn, in classical Greek, they were all pronounced a bit differently. Like, okay, well, fair enough. Yeah, sub internet. Sorry. But O is a great name for the stream, in my opinion. Posh.o or O. I don't get that, Austin D'Italio. Sorry about that. Is there any significance difference between tabernacled and dwelt? Tabernacle or dwelling it is very important, but it's not substantially different, because they are referring to the same thing. It's God being among us and incarnating, but it has this very ancient sense of setting up tents on a hill, right? Like that's how you imagine God's will. You don't imagine it literally, but how they imagine like gods would live. Like when you read about the Greeks believed the gods were on Olympus. Harry Ludwig, I don't know why you're being passive aggressive. There's no need for it. We're dealing with this topic now. When we talk about tabernacling, right, they are not talking about there are literally like ghosty people in like armor in different colors, on a hill. But that's why, for example, St. Peter would say to Jesus let's set up tents here, Lord, etc. This is all appealing to a very old way of thinking that is symbolic, but this is how they would envision it. It has, like for us, when you think of, I don't know, like Batman or something, if you are not familiar with the idea of Batman, saying Batman just makes no sense to you. But if you're really into the whole thing, which I'm not, saying someone is like Batman or like Superman, if you're only acquainted with the term Übermensch, is not going to be is going to have a completely different meaning than this guy in latex. Okay. The difference to Tosh 2.0. Okay. Mac and Posh. Okay. Who is this over? I don't know what that means, Harry. Okay. So one more topic to cover and a general point of advice, and then I'll be off. Is that I started off talking about the like everyone on Twitter is having gender wars and like who's being run through, who isn't, and then is it worse if a man cheats or if a woman cheats? And like on the last stream, I talked about that this is always a sense of, I don't know, it's like people default to some type of Darwinian thinking. And if you're an atheist, okay, go ahead. Nothing, we've talked about this many times, and I read something like, man cheating isn't as bad because men have to deal with different evolutionary pressures. Right? What evolutionary pressures, for God's sake? Just keep it between your legs. It's not that difficult. I mean, I understand passion. I understand temptations. Posh, are you there still? Yep. Is something cutting out or anything? Appreciate all the help you've been to us silly Americans, Posh. Well, thank God I've been able to be of assistance. That is truly something I'm grateful for. But back to the manosphere people, right? Always something to default, and as has been the modus operandi of them, I think it's always excuse making. When you are having saying things like evolutionary pressures, then you're going to start reading into that whatever you want, because evolutionary pressures, like, men, like, what is it Dennis Prager said, men are built, or they have an innate desire for like diversity of partners or a multiplicity. I'm not sure how he phrased it, but then okay, so why can't we just have basically is it an excuse, or is it, I lost my train of thought, sorry about that, but as we're talking, if we have different evolutionary pressures, how do you know what evolutionary pressures the other sex has? Right? If women cheat, why is that somehow less of an evolutionary pressure? It's nonsense. Because all things, when people appeal to evolution, is nonsense, as we have learned throughout many, many debates on many different topics with atheists, because then you would have to say anything is evolutionary. There isn't, you can appeal to some type of mean, I suppose, but that doesn't do any good in particular cases. And it's too much of this nexus that creates anything you wanted to create. Like for leftists, it's oppression. For like the libertarians, it's this, will or desire to impose your will on other people, etc. You just appeal to something like that, and you put it in like a washing machine to spin the thing, and throw up whatever you want to have thrown up. That's weird to me, because most of the people I met who crush on multiple people at once are women. Again, why? How would you know what women are built for if you're a man, and vice versa, by the way? But I always read from the manosphere, them talking about different evolutionary pressures on men. Well, we just have to, and this leads me to another point: is there has been such a horrible stereotype built that women are basically asexual, They barely have anything of a sex drive, except for a couple of exceptions. And this is such a modern way of thinking that it's outstanding, not just in the West, but throughout the world. Like, no one has ever thought of women as asexual beings, or, like Gavin McInnes says, trying to get a woman to bed is like trying to get a little dough to eat out of your hand, etc. Rubbish. It's all nonsense. It's all, I don't know, this type of 50s film or whatever, that unless you either have a very timid woman or you have a femme fatale, and it's just not the case. I used to think like that when I was very, very young, but turns out no. But it's one stereotype we need to stop with, because we have created an idea that they're like innocent little bunnies, hopping around, hoping nothing will hurt them, which they're not. Women are very capable of insidiousness, and even, of course, debauchery of immense magnitude. The evolutionary pressures can be used as an excuse for any abhorrent behavior. Yes, because it can't even account for abhorrent. It just, everything is a result of evolutionary pressures. Same argument for atheists who are against religion. If religion is a result of evolution, how is it against it? Exactly. We are just two different evolutionary models, right? We are programmed by evolution to believe in God, and these people are programmed not to believe in God. It's just two different stratagems. Yada yada yada. Posh just bragging about women throwing themselves at him. No, that is not the case. It's I say women are fascinated until they start talking to me, and then everything's ruined. Like when the novelty of the voice wears off and they start discerning words, that's when I'm done. The manosphere has one of the worst takes on Stoicism. Sigma male LARPers are even worse. Yeah, sounds like Calvinism, exactly, because it is a type of determinism. They just pretend like they're out of it in order to be able to, discern it. Who is the Uber wench? I'm going to have to remember that phrase, Joel Walker. That's wonderful. Uber wench. Right, and the second stereotype is that men are basically just beasts, like animals, and not in like the sort of a nice sense, like, you're a beast, you're able to lift something very heavy or work very hard. Well, there's beasts that are feral, like feral beasts and beasts of burden. That's basically your choice, and I'm rather unhappy being considered either. But it's been this idea, like Owen talks about how men should, you're dirty. Your clothing is dirty. That's just proof that you are a real man. And just no, not at all. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. If you, as I said on the last stream, the value of either a man or a woman does not come from any biological function. It does not come from any even social function. It ultimately comes from the fact that man is created in the image of God, and that we are supposed to be the temples of the Holy Spirit. So being a slob is not exactly, it's a type of slothfulness, just going outside, I don't care what people think about me, etc. It's no different, when when South Park was roasting, what do you call them? Like the motor gangs? Bikers, right? So you just dress ridiculously and are very loud. You're basically, 16-year-old girls. D sends £5 and says, "Return to based Viking monkey." And I also love to remind them that Viking isn't like a thing. It just means raider. Well, actually, Vikinger means raider, but Viking means raiding. So, we were raiders. Okay, good on you. You're basically bragging about piratery. Sorry, I need to read this. There is a high-profile atheist YouTuber who have made videos about religion being an evolutionary mistake. If you believe in evolution, there are no mistakes. It's just a train moving down tracks. Exactly, Disms. Exactly. Right? Evolution doesn't care about anything. It just throws out, different ways of thinking or behaving, and some of it sticks, some of it doesn't. And as Jim Bob has made the point in his debates, like, well, I thought the big thing about evolution is procreation and keeping your genetic line and whatever not. Well, atheists are really poor on that in that regard, and all the time people responded, well, just procreation isn't sufficient. Okay, but it is necessary. So if you are sub-replacement levels of reproduction, then you're just going to collapse. It doesn't matter how well the people in that period live. It's just going to collapse in and on itself. So they try to make it about, well, you can have 10 kids and be poor. Okay, or you can have no kids and just die. So if you want, so we'll need to find something in between. Well, atheists suck at any of them. So they are more of an evolutionary mistake by their own metrics than the religious people are, because religious people are still the only ones reproducing. Even though with general secularization of culture and decrease in religiosity, barely any place in the world is even at replacement rates. Right? There are some places in Africa, basically. So, even they are also decreasing. Like, it's decreasing across the board. We have an entire generation that has been told they are no more than an animal, so they embrace the carnal at the expense of the spiritual. Yes, that's also a point I want to make. You know how people like to say, like Peterson points out, that the biggest difference in where men and women go into traditionally male and masculine and feminine jobs or professions, it's in Scandinavia. Why? Because if there are genuine, innate, integral differences between men and women, and they might not be very strong, let's say, that means that as you remove external pressure, those are going to be more and more pronounced. That is what we're discovering. Now, obviously, progressives just keep doubling down and saying, well, it's not perfect in Scandinavia either. Okay, but we're seeing the complete opposite of what we should be seeing based on your on what on your model, right? The same thing. If we don't have any social restrictions, all that's going to be left is like what is biological. I'm not denying that there is a biological I don't know what to call it, like basis, like this fundamental piece that is how men act, how women act. But I'm saying that there's this overriding spiritual one that is much more important. So the more you are destroying the spiritual aspect, you're going to be more left with the carnal. Posh, do you see a connection between Montanism and modern charismatic movements? Well, I don't know. Don't mean to be honest, not really. Because it's not like they claim new things or in any actual sense. They're just so devoid of any tradition, any way to practice it, right? This is a huge problem of faith alone, right? In the sense that they understand it, belief alone, because you've just done. And then Protestants do wonderful work, as far as charity is concerned and things like that. I'm not going to deny that. Of course not. It would be silly of me. But they have no practice. There is no constant progress, which is what we see in ourselves constantly. This is why people love RPG games. They're designed to work with this idea of constantly progressing, reaching a new level, etc., etc. And I believe that is because we are built for theosis. We are built to grow ever towards the image of God, infinitely so, including in the eschaton, after the general resurrection, But then some of them slip into just politics. Jesus wants you to have an AR-15. You get into the people who then go to save puppies or the gays, and then you also got the more charismatic people who are who just, I don't know what that's doing, but it's not what we should be expecting from a Christian behavior. Okay. George Dimitrievich says, is word Viking connected to Vicanie? I suppose that's Vicanie, because I can imagine that raiders were shouting when they raided places. I'm not sure. I would have to check it. Yes, Viking is a verb, but I don't think so. It is very possible. Slavic languages and Germanic languages do overlap to an extent. Sounds like a white people hobby, right? Because they dance with absolutely no rhythm. Oh goodness! The religion evolution video was by Tirzo. Is it Tirzo? Like Animal Zoo, and genetically modified skeptic. I'll have to check it. Charismatics usually backload works into salvation. Very, very few actually believe in grace or salvation by faith in Christ. That might be true, Matthew. I'm speaking as what is my general perception of the, because it's not like a single thing. It's many different types of charismatics and stuff. Throws away AR-15. Right. But back to what I was saying, I want to remind people again of this. Please don't just keep these our theological points, our most fundamental ones, merely for apologetics or for swatting away certain doubts or arguments. Like when we say evil is the movement of the will away from God, right? Aberrant behaviors are deviations from proper behaviors. They're perverted, bent, distorted forms of something that is good and proper. Sexual debauchery is not because is an aberrant version of proper sexuality. Celibacy is not abstaining from something bad. It is abstaining from something good for the purpose of self-denial, right? It's denying yourself a luxury that is not looked down upon, which is, marriage and having children and procreation and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, in the Catholic Church, there is a sense of, which is very Augustinian, that sex is ungodly because it puts you in this sense of passion, and Saint Augustine himself struggled with the idea how it is allowed even in marriage. But that's just not a view that became prevalent in the East, as I said early on in the stream. He already smoked. I'm going to light a cigarette just because Athanasius is being mean to me. No, I just talk a lot, so I forget to even light one up. Yes, just like fasting from meats and alcohol, good things. Yeah, they can be bad, like if it becomes self-indulgence. So when we abstain from meat, dairy, alcohol, what do you call them, like heavier foods, like more caloric ones, that's not because it's bad to eat caloric foods, right? It's not that eating meat is evil, but like, okay, you can eat it, but this I'm not allowed. It still confuses. I don't know if it means it confuses you Dijon mustard. Still confuses, if it confuses you, it's again because in the West there was this prevalent thinking, and still is, unfortunately, with whoops. I was baking yesterday, and I set up an alarm, and I didn't turn it off for today. It's not a bad thing, as long as it is within marriage, and it isn't just this sense of, as much as overeating is a sin, eating isn't a sin. That's not the problem. But we really should be very wary of these types of legalistic approaches. Again, St. Augustine was someone who struggled with sexual deviance before his conversion. That's how he got his son Deodatus, who was also a bishop, if I remember correctly. But he is not... that is something that would have colored his struggles later on, as it does with all of us. But he struggled with this question, and the church simply did not agree with the conclusion. But we need to realize Christians should abstain from all evil, all bad things, always. Of course, we fail. That's why God gave us the ability to repent and make up for it, Pietra Garde for $10 says, Bosh. Thank you, Pietra Garde. But then when we enter fasting, or when someone decides to attempt the monastic life, they reject even the things that are considered absolutely fine, but then tone it down even more to pure asceticism. That is the purpose of monasticism. Asceticism, denying the world much more so than you would if you were just a regular family man. After being a porn brain my whole life, I'm discovering what sex really is. Glory to God, but it fascinates me. I'm still a virgin, so no experience. Well, Deshaun, as I said, it has its place. It has its proper placing. So it's good to read about it, right, from the Holy Fathers and the teachings of the Church, because we shouldn't fall into legalism. All of the rules that are set up for us, like Christ says about, the Sabbath, like the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It isn't that God set up this rule for the sake of setting up a rule. There is also that ritual aspect to it, but it was made for man. God loves humanity, right? The restriction on sex isn't because God set up rules for the sake of setting up the rules, and now you follow them, and that's a good. No. The rules that he set up are for the purposes of keeping us on a path towards him, keeping us from the passions, keeping us from the ways that we could deviate from what is good and proper. And that is why we come to repentance and to the sacraments and through prayer and fasting for the purposes of cleaning ourselves up and getting up back on the path towards God. It's not, I accidentally ate something that had some milk in it, my fast is ruined. That's scrupulosity, and there are those people, but that's not a proper, how shall we say, a proper spiritual place to be at. Okay. You bake? Yes, I actually cook quite a bit. I think I told the story of how when I was living alone, when I was studying, and I realized I can only fry and boil eggs, that I felt completely and utterly useless. So I started to learn, and homemade bread is the best thing ever. So yeah, bake. I don't bake sweets, though. I don't like sweet food. Have I missed something? There is a Coptic Russian Greek Orthodox Church near where I live. Which one should I attend? Coptics are not part of the Eastern Orthodox Church. They're part of the Oriental Orthodox Church. I'm not going to get into that now. So go between Russian and Greek. The Russians tend to be the most no-nonsense church. So I would personally recommend that, but your personal experience might differ completely. Hey, Posh, would you say to people who think hesychasm is the same thing as the Eastern mystics like Buddhism and Hindu? What would I say to them? Well, no. Eastern mysticism is more about letting go of everything, detaching yourself from the world, emptying your mind, which is what the demons would want, wouldn't they? Hesychasm is the idea of practice of filling yourself with Christ, with the Spirit. Right. That is why for example, when we talk about the Jesus prayer, it's constant focusing on Christ. It's not about emptying your head. So the fact that, it's like anyone who wants to pray in seclusion and quiet, is that Eastern mysticism? No, it's a completely different paradigm. It's a completely different objective that one is trying to reach with the approach of hesychasm. That's the basic thing. Posh, can you please say Twitter user penis retard? Oh, in a condescending tone. Twitter user penis retard. Is that you? Because that always makes me laugh, that username. Alexandra, be getting that Mexican takeout with lard refried beans. Wow. Who is... That's right. You may not be in Lent still. We've still got some ways to go. Well said. And that also has the side effect of keeping us safe and away from unnecessary pain. Yes. George says, if women can't speak in church and our body is temple church, then women should not speak at all. Fair enough. As I said, like women not speaking in church, that's more like when you enter this new phase where women are allowed in the main, the nave of the church. They used to be just allowed in front of like the synagogue, just in front. They're not allowed to enter, but they can't hear anything. So what will they do? They would chatter amongst themselves. And St. Paul says, none of that anymore. You are now inside the nave. No chit chat should be happening. Men are the best cooks. I heard there was a video. It's one of the best videos ever. Like Conan O'Brien, Norm Macdonald, and Ramsay, like some cooking segment. And I remember Gordon Ramsay saying, "No. Men are chefs, women are cooks." The audience starts booing. Okay, I really got a laugh out of that. Okay. Deshaun Mustard, your Twitter name might not be apt for YouTube. Better to be innocent than to be worldly, wise, and sophisticated. Absolutely. The cunning of intellect can easily backfire, and we see no shortage of examples of it. No cackling from the heads. I'm definitely a better cook than my fiance. Well, Randy West, because you didn't spell it with 2 E's at the end, that means you're engaged to a man. So the French got one over on you. Her food is bland. Maybe she's just, Dutch. My wife is a great cook, but whenever I cook, our son enjoys my cooking more. That's a very, very misogynistic son you've got there, Athanasius. Oh, she's English. Well, good luck, mate. That's all I have to say. I saw this meme of like, in The Simpsons when Maggie has to choose between going to the Simpson or to the Flanders, and they're in like a river and dirty, and then the Flanderses are all like shining in the shining light, and the Simpson says, beans in British cooking, the Flanders says beans in Mexican cooking. Decent sounds. I stand by English cooking. Well, fair enough. There was recently a food war online where like Mexicans and the English were calling each other out. So the English were calling Mexican food slop that is overspiced, and then the Mexicans were calling British food, bland and stuff. So stay away from pure ceramic cookware. Yikes. Well, I don't actually use ceramic cookware, I don't believe. Mexicans make slop. You're all missing out if you don't marry a Cajun. Thank you. Thank you for the advice. Most Mexican restaurants around me have bland food. Recently, I think there's a trend of the Chinese making fun of white people food. Of all the people in the world, like at least only I think the Indians have it worse. Because recently on Twitter, someone started a food war between the sub-Saharan Africans and the Indians, and I cannot tell you how funny it is. Because I can't even repeat the burns. You can imagine where that could go, and look for it even. Overpriced slop, you mean, curry? Yeah, fair enough. We don't have very spicy food, as in like a lot of spices here in Serbia, but our food is rather caloric, right? It's very filling, and I like it quite a bit. South Louisiana Cajun bar, yeah, like Serbian a la alligator a la Serbian. Just goes with a lot of sauerkraut. Every item on the Mexican menu is just rice, beans, and meat. Sometimes they put chocolate in it. Okay, like here in Serbia, the worst thing you could ever do is mix spicy. Sorry, you don't call it salty. What do you call it? Goodness. But the sweet and savory, yes, sweet and savory is like the biggest no in the history of the world here. So when you suggest to someone to eat peanut butter and jelly, they'll think you'll be trying to. Thank you, everyone, for savory. Yes. And thank you, Stephen Buzzrecker, for spelling it correctly. Albanian cuisine is grilled meat with carbs. Greek food is carbs with grilled meat. Well, that would work. Oh, the Greeks eat a lot of sweets. Serbian is Eastern European, so very caloric, and sauerkraut. Yes. And I like it that way. Maybe just because I'm acclimated to it, but I there's this point at which when you overspice everything, you just burn your taste buds, and then nothing ever tastes well. British spelling is wrong spelling. Marmite. I've never tried Marmite. Probably good reason for it, as in it never spread. But you could package it like, oh, this is the traditional food that people ate, and they don't eat the corporate, poison, and then people would buy it. Well, Emmanuel, a Mexican, says, I don't like spicy food, so I'm the exception around me. But we do have lots of mixed flavors in Mexico. He spelled flavors wrongly, as opposed to having a distinct flavor on a dish. Yeah, I understand. Polish food is very caloric and sauerkraut. Yep, Slavic. Okay, so that's about it. Maybe I didn't finish my point exactly. Don't keep the points like evil being the movement of the will away from God as an apologetic point, but then when you approach things, then you say, oh, this type of behavior, that is evil somehow with some type of ontological self-subsistence. No, that we do not have that in our system. So when you see a bad behavior, the analysis should always go towards, what is this an aberration of? Like we talked about fasting and things like that, right? Similarly, when you see a behavior, what is the Christian proper way that has been debased into the behavior I see in front of me? American spelling is so art-hearted. Okay. We've got Stephen Buzzwrecker refuses to say that British spelling is correct. He just says because he's Irish, he can only say that the American is wrong. The mini is silent. Aussies also have a superpower. They raise their kids on Vegemite. I also don't know what that is, except that it's in that song, Vegemite sandwich. Mexican food is not a US Mexican food. Yes, that's also correct. Dole pizza, živela givanica. I second that. Bill Hicks, I think, because it makes human flesh taste bad to dingoes. Can we not make up words for the crake? Not sure. She can reach puberty. We know who these guys, align with. Oh, look, it's a retard. Good. I haven't heard one of those in quite a while, have I? As an American Irishman, I represent that remark. I first read it correctly, then I corrected myself, and then realized I was correct the first time. Okay, back to what I was saying in conclusion. If it is a moral inquiry you were looking to go down, you have to go with what is this debased form of. That is how you will be able to assess things correctly and also be able to address it. If we I got so holed up in food during the Lent, which is always a smart idea. I suppose that yes, right. I want to tie it back into evolutionary pressures, yada yada yada. It's really silly to abandon our approach and then go for some type of social pressure, biological intent, or whatever. We don't go by that because, as we know, the ones who do go by that can't even justify their own approach to things. So when you're trying to interact with people, please go before doing so, analyze that, and then approach things. Don't engage with them because you will jump into their paradigm. And unless you're doing an internal critique, that is always a failure on someone's part. Crake. We have ourselves an Irishman. I don't know what crake is. And I'm probably, now knowing that it's Irish, I'm probably mispronouncing it. And it's pronounced glob. You know how I said you think someone is messing with you with English spelling? You know, they just sort of write it. And the Gaelic languages are even worse on that point. Did Baron Strawberry explain the word crake to me? Was it No, I'm not going to guess, because if I guess, I'm going to get it wrong, and then I'll remember the wrong thing I thought I got right. That happens all the time, like when you've got two switches and only one of them is turns on the light, and then you try to guess which one, and then you pick the wrong one, and then the next time you say, I'm going to correct myself the next time, and then you don't correct yourself the next time because you correct what you thought this time should have been your choice. I'm sure that made a lot of sense to everyone. Welsh words be like, oh yeah. Never ask for directions in Wales, Baldrick. You'll be washing spit from your hair for a fortnight. Craig has been out of control in the Irish ghettos. Craig heads everyone. English spelling is always trolling him, yeah. My grandparents are from Camp Kerry, so okay. Okay, so that was my parting message to you. Don't forget that what we talk about, how we think as Orthodox Christians, is not just there to be for the purposes of argumentation or for the purposes of quelling certain doubts. No, it is how we should approach life and how we should assess our how we move forward, how we act, how we interact with other people, how we try to correct things we believe are wrong, rather than just making it intellectual. If all orthodoxy is not there for intellectual purposes, the intellectual aspects are part of it, but the purpose is always theosis, always a life lived in Christ and participating in his grace, which is what theosis is. It is ever growing to be more like him, which is an infinite road to go down, and God willing, we keep at it as much as we can. So that's about it. I don't know if do any of the mods here know if someone from our group is streaming soon, so I alert people to it. I didn't see anyone being scheduled, so I'm not sure. So just that, just to check that. As a realist, I'm remembering the incorrect switch feet forever. Oh God. Thanks, Bosch. I feel like I've been ankle biting about this lately. You hit the nail on the head. Well, very happy to be of help, Melaforta. It's been something I've been thinking about these days myself, so that's why I wanted to jump on and talk about it. So it wasn't to win the debate that I started a family dinner. Well, sorry, well, Emmanuel. There's no greater attempt at theosis than arguing with family over dinner. Crucible in 20 minutes. Okay. Any mod? Could any mod post the link? Because once you do, I'll leave it on for a minute or so people can get it, and then I'll be off. Just to repeat, currently the best way to support me is via PayPal. Well, via PayPal, which is in the description. If you can, of course, don't. I know this. You've been just over the holidays. People use a lot of money need a lot of money during the holidays, but that's the best way to support. Okay, Athanasius posted it. Slowboy Whiteboard posted it. That's excellent. Raid us in. I can't do it because I don't have a subscription yet. So for now, this is the best I can do until I get access to all the super chats, which is why I said currently the best thing is PayPal until I get this sorted out, I have not yet had access to any of the super chats. So sorry about that. Okay. Yeah. Wait, can we make it a meme? Like, because as we said, to Viking means, like, Viking means to raid. Can we start calling it Vikinging? Because then we can annoy the neo-pagan gits. We're the real Vikings. We're sending people over to our friends' streams. Take that. There's a big old chunk of change waiting for you once you get access to those super chats. Oh yeah, I'll be able to buy like 2 beers. PayPal's still better until the paperwork gets worked. So again, it's going to be good once it happens. But Crucible Vikings. Nice. Why does every modern pagan look like Aaron Ra? Because they're all gay and require a lot of attention. House. Okay, Vikingers. You have the links there, and that's it from me. Best luck to you in the new year. God bless you, and God willing, we'll talk about. Is there anything Andrew and I disagree on? Maybe on some political things, but if you watch my interview with him, we agree on pretty much everything. So I wouldn't say anything of substance. Isn't Aaron Ra like 5'2"? I don't know. Why would I know or care? He looks like Jafar. He's like a midget Jafar who's fat. Damn it, I shouldn't be thinking or talking like that during Lent. Okay, God bless you all. Hopefully see you again on Thursday. All the best and God bless you. Oops. Click here. Bye.